Hey, what's up? I'm Marty Yang, creator of the Lucky Brain podcast. Thanks so much for tuning in. If you're enjoying the content, please hit the like button and also subscribe to my channel. Thanks so much. Hope you enjoy. Genein, thank you so much for doing this. I appreciate it. So first of all, let me say thank you for the work that you're doing. I was checking out some of the content that you have online, and you know it's truly amazing stuff. So thanks for that. I'll introduce you. You are an author, a best-selling author of the book From Debt to Destiny. And you are also a public speaker who's presented at a TEDx event, which was a great speech, by the way. That was awesome. I've been part of Toastmasters as well, so I know what that must feel like, or at least anticipate what that must feel like in order to give a speech with such a large platform. And then also, too, you're the creator of a podcast, Create and Grow Rich. So all this stuff is very amazing work. And also you are a teacher at a charter school. Yeah. So I want to first start off with the book. I think it's important for people to know, what led to that? What led to you writing that book?
Sure. Thank you so much for having me on the show and for being able to share my gems. And you see there's a diamond behind me because that's my metaphorical message. So it's called From Debt to Destiny, Creating Financial Freedom from the Inside Out. And it was the impetus after I found myself on the rug crying with a $60,000 student loan bill and a huge credit card bill in my 30s, and realizing I had no financial education whatsoever. And I just was astonished that I was officially educated per American standards,
right,
yet lacked this basic knowledge that turns out to be so critical for an overall life well lived. Money isn't everything, but it touches everything. So I was very surprised that I didn't have the information. And so I worked on getting out of debt and learned a lot of lessons along the way, psychological lessons, mindset lessons, but also the practical ones as well. And then creative lessons. And I decided that, this is working out for my husband and I. We are really getting this, but what good would it be if I just kept it to myself?
Yeah.
As an educator, as you mentioned, once a teacher, always a teacher. And I actually did leave the classroom last year, so I'm no longer teaching full time.
Gotcha.
But once a teacher, always a teacher wherever I go.
Yeah.
And writing that book was one way for me to take all of my experiences, all of my lessons, and then take my skill of teaching and teach it to whoever knows how to read English.
Yeah.
From here, it's been read around the world, downloads around the world. So it's been a pleasure to share my story and hopefully empower other people and inspire other people to create their financial freedom from the inside out.
From the inside out. Yeah, that's amazing. So how did you do that, Genein? What are the strategies that you use? I mean, obviously paying, but is there any financial strategies? What are the financial strategies you used in order to pay down your debt? Is it setting a monthly budget to make sure, hey, we got to put this much down? Or what are some of those things that you did in order to help you get out of that debt? Because that's a large amount of debt.
Yeah, it's $100,000, especially on a teacher's salary, right?
Yes.
But, my degree is in psychology, so I really start there. And I have an online class because I realize not everyone loves to read. I do. You might, but not everyone does. So I put all of this in my online class in my Creative Wealth Academy, where I talk about it's most of the numbers isn't numbers. It's your mindset and your psychology around the numbers. What does money mean to you? How do you feel when it flows in and out of your life? What was your childhood experiences? How did you witness money growing up? So that was the first strategy. You can talk numbers all day, but if you don't understand how your mind is working around this energy, because money is energy, then that's the first thing. So I really got my mindset around it. And I really started thinking to myself of money can come and go. I just have to be creative around it and just really reset my mind that we could do this. It's just money. Yes, I make a certain amount from my teaching job, but I can increase that by being more creative. So empowering myself is the first step. The second step is just laying out all the numbers. You can't work with stuff if you don't know what you're working with.
Right.
And so just really starting to track more, I did do the hard work, or not the hard work, but the tedious work of tracking to find out averages to see how much we were actually spending on food or how much we were actually going out. Because when you're spending, especially when you're sliding cards, it's not really registering as much as when you're paying with cold hard card cash. So, I mean, if my husband bought a pack of gum, I marked it, you know.
Wow.
Not
Yeah.
forever, but for that time, for about 2 to 3 months, just to see what our spending behavior was and where we could cut back. And then
Absolutely.
another key strategy that I really think that people should be mindful of, you know, in addition to like the getting out of debt strategies of like the snowball, you know, effect that Dave Ramsey talks about, or the avalanche effect, where you put them in order by the interest rates, the snowball, you put them in order by the balance, and you just focus on that top one while the other ones are still getting their minimum payments, but you put all your power, all your extra money towards that one debt, and that's how you snowball it or you interest rate it. But
Okay.
another key thing is being mindful of where your money is going and contacting companies, especially now. I don't know when you're going to air this, but especially now during this COVID time where everyone is really trying to be more mindful of where their money is flowing out of, contacting companies, having conversations. They would rather keep you and lower your rate than have you leave. So if you really put up some negotiation skills, and I think as Americans,
Huh.
especially as women, we need to be better negotiators. If you really know your value to the company and start from that positioning, you'd be surprised. Like I called our car insurance and told them, yeah, you know, we're dealing with this. And by the way, I'm a teacher. You know, if you're a teacher, if you're a veteran, if you're a senior citizen, we just really looked at every single area and to see where we can get the best discounts. Because $5 here and there and there and there, it adds up.
Yeah, absolutely. I used to be with New York Life, and the main thing that they taught us was like, first of all, you gotta help people do a budget to let them know, like, hey, you're spending all this money on things that are not necessarily fixed expenses. You know, your phone bill and your gas and your rent; those things are like stuff that you have to pay. But if you're, you know, buying Starbucks every day, that may need to be cut out if you're trying to get out of debt, or if you're trying to save, or if you're trying to invest and things like that. So I think that's, man, that's, for me, that would be a step one. Is like, okay, get a picture, a visual picture of where my money is going. So, you know, congratulations on that. That's amazing.
And
I
don't
want,
think that you have to get rid of Starbucks, because I go from the psychology part. I move those things that I just did without even thinking. I move them to my reward section. So if I went, you know, a good two weeks being really diligent with this, I treated myself to Starbucks after those 2 weeks. So I
brilliant.
just switched it, you know. So because I don't think you should take out all the fun, because then you'll get discouraged and you'll quit. But
Yeah.
moving it to the reward section helps.
Yeah. So when you're writing this book, so I mean, that's a pretty like difficult feat in itself, to just like sit down and concentrate in doing that. Were you like at cafes and like, would you talk a lot about creativity? What was your creative process in writing this book? Did you go to the beach, or like what helps you to get your creative juices flowing?
Well, it's interesting because this book actually took a lot longer than my other books will, hopefully. Actually, probably took 3 years, but I don't want people to feel like, oh, 3 years. You know, some people take, 10 years, some people take 3 months. It really depends. But going back to the psychological aspect, I thought about that young 16-year-old kid whose lives could be changed if they had this book in their hand beforehand, or that college kid who just graduated with $80,000 worth of debt and a Starbucks job and they have no idea where to start.
Yeah.
That was my first motivation that kept me going. And another thing is I even had a baby throughout it all, so that was
Yeah.
another thing too. But
Wow.
it's just, you have to find the time. There's a great quote that says, writing is quiet, it won't fight for your time. Like, you have to set time to write because there's always something that will come up. So for
Yeah.
me, it was the morning time, especially after the baby was born. And I just had to get up an hour or two earlier when it's still dark outside. And now I just kept that schedule. My baby sleeps a lot longer now. he's 2.5, so he's not a big baby. But now I'm still up early in the morning to get things done while it's quiet. So for people who really have that goal, it's to understand why you have the goal, and whatever creative ideas in your heart, you don't want to go to the grave with it. So that will be a motivator to get it done and to be a little bit more disciplined to get up or stay up later or secure your lunch hour. Maybe you give up 2 days a week for your lunch hour and you just write, there's different status for different people, but the why and then the discipline has to be there.
Why and the discipline. Yeah, that's amazing. Because most people, discipline, honestly, for me is something that I struggle with from time to time doing, say, for example, like with my body or something like that, working out and things like that. So just to have that discipline is something that is pretty amazing. Talking about creativity, you are also, you left the classroom, you said last year, but that's interesting. I think that's a really important thing to be able to teach kids. Has that been something that was like you were always interested in?
Well, my mother was an educator, my first teacher, and brilliant. She taught us really. So when I say creativity, I don't necessarily mean artistry. I believe artistry is very important. But when I say creativity, we're talking about the process of problem finding and problem solving with value, relevance, and novelty. So the process of thinking of new ideas and making those connections that no one else is seeing. And for creativity, the edge that I think I have, there's a few creative thinkers or teachers and trainers out there, but I think one edge that I have is that I do have a background working with children. And in the words of Albert Einstein, he says, if you can teach a 6-year-old something, you can teach anybody. Yeah. And so the ability to break down complicated concepts, and because creative thinking is just a system of cognitive processes that the brain does, divergent thinking, association, combining things, not being held by functional fixedness. You're able to see different functions for one item, perspective agility. You can get into multiple perspectives. So these are just cognitive functions that anyone can do. So my ability to teach adults these, I make it fun, I make it easy, simple to understand, because my training comes from teaching kids, and you have to make it fun. You cannot sit in front of a 5-year-old and lecture for 50 minutes. That's not going to work. Right. So I just take those same tactics I did in the elementary classroom and bring it to the adults.
Yeah. One of the businesses or needs, especially during these times during COVID and Corona, is for educators to come into the home and teach kids, like private educators. So that, from what I hear, people are paying some big bucks for that. Is that something that you had ever thought of, or are you more just like, hey, let me just do these public speaking events, let me just write some more books, let me just create this podcast, because all of it's beautiful. But that's something that I was privy to most recently. Have you heard anything about this?
Yeah, as you saw, there's a lot of shifting going on these past 8 months. This time last year, no one had no clue we would be here on Zoom. I think I may have used Zoom once or twice before February, and now it's a daily thing, right? Yeah. And there's different companies come up. Now, I say I didn't leave the classroom. I just expanded my walls. And so as of right now, my focus and my gift is to get the workforce back to their childlike creative thinking abilities. Mm-hmm. I know there's wonderful opportunities for the kids, and I know that there's great educators out there, but adults need to regain that ability to imagine. Absolutely. We need answers that we don't even know to ask the questions for. So in order to do that, we have to reignite our imagination, our curiosity, our ability to wonder, and then get back to our creative work.
I think that's an important thing, because as we grow older, our creativity kind of dims and we start to become more like adult oriented. But the childlike creativity, I think, is a brilliant thing. When you're in the education system or in the education process, like, what do you feel is a hindrance in the evolution from, elementary to middle school to high school? where does the creativity start to die down? At what at what grade do you think is like, oh, like, yeah, the creativity is actually dying down a lot?
Well, there's actually research on this, so it's not my just opinions. I've dug deep into the research. I don't think there's one particular place. And, you know, Sir Ken Robinson just passed last month, and he has a great TED Talk, one of the most watched TED Talks online, called "Are Schools Killing Creativity?" And it was a very provocative question because, wait, what? No, we're giving kids an education. But at the same time, are we lowering their ability to think creatively? Not just artistically. He does talk a lot about the arts, but think creatively. And I sadly do agree with him. And I think it's not one particular pinpoint, it's an aggregate or a compounding effect. So the second a child walks into their kindergarten classroom, there's colors on the wall, you know, there's movable desks, there's different centers, there's manipulatives, there's things to interact with. And then if you go into a 12th grade classroom, not so much, right?
Right.
You know, the seats are bolted to the floor. There's hardly anything on the walls besides like a list of rules and the lunch instructions, right?
Yeah.
And then when you go to college and then when you graduate to the workforce, you're in cubicles, you know, there's nothing on the walls. And people would laugh at me when I would work in the workforce, my job before I came to the classroom, because my cubicle would be like they said, I feel like I'm walking into your home. Like I just made it very me, because your space is a big indicator of your ability to think creatively. It has an effect on it. So as far as pinpointing, the research shows that at kindergarten, there was about 98% of the population that they surveyed was operating at their true creative genius. By 10 years old, you know, it went from 30%, then it went from 12%, and then they got discouraged, so they stopped this longitudinal study. But then they looked at a group of adults, and about 2% of adults were operating at their creative genius ability. So there's not really one grade. It's a compounding effect through the years.
Yeah, that aggregate of just getting beaten down by the man.
Really quick, if you look at what creative thinking needs, it needs divergent thinking, it needs curiosity, it needs but the school system really focuses on convergent thinking. There's only one right answer. There's not a lot of time for curiosity. There's a lot of focus on testing, so that competition, things like that.
Yeah, I seen like a great picture of, I think it was Albert Einstein, kind of his quote of like, it was a teacher teaching different animals. The picture was like an elephant, a monkey, something along these lines. And it was kind of focusing on like, if the test is like, okay, we need to climb this tree, of course the monkey is going to be able to climb the tree the fastest. I mean, how is an elephant going to climb the tree? You know what I'm saying? And from my own experience, that is a very narrow-minded, the school system I'm talking about, very, like you said, convergent type of thinking, like how do we get the best test scores? So as we grow older, what are some of the tools that you are using or to get adults back into their creative mindset?
Sure. Well, I work with businesses and corporations and people who need answers like yesterday, right? And the first thing is mindset. So we first of all redefine creativity. Sometimes a lot of people had childhood or adolescent issues, or I don't want to say trauma, but some of them may have trauma. But even something where you created something in your childhood and someone, you know, told you it was stupid, so you stopped creating. And then that you carry that all the way into your adulthood. And we're not even mindful that this happened anymore, but for some reason, and we don't want to create. And or you're sitting with a good idea, but you don't want to share it because, you know, there's a training that I have called Courageous Creativity. Like, how do you be courageous and bold with your creative ideas? And these are skills. Creativity is a skill, which means like typing. Anyone can learn this. It's not, you know, you were born with it and you're not. Sucks to be you.
Gotcha.
And so there's those avenues. Another thing is, like I said, these are cognitive functions. So we practice with perception agility. We practice with curiosity, sitting in wonder, sitting in ambiguity. What does that look like? What does it feel like? I also bring the emotions into it. And even though creativity isn't artistry, I do bring, I mean, even though creativity isn't solely artistry, of course, artistry and artists are creative,
Of course.
but a lot of people think they're not creative because they're not excellent in the arts. So that's where the
Oh,
fallacy is, you know?
yeah.
But even though it's not artistry or solely artistry, I
Solely
use the
artistry.
arts to bring up people's creativity in non-arts areas. So even though
Mm-hmm.
you're in sales and you're in numbers, I would bring you through a musical exercise to help you be a better salesman. I would bring you through a dance exercise to help you be a better engineer. I
Yeah.
would bring you through a visual imaging exercise to help you be a better accountant. Does that make sense?
Yeah, uh-huh. It almost seems like the creativity, as you said, is almost like a muscle or like a routine or like a habit, something that you practice. And if you're able to practice being creative in dancing, that translates over into sales. Yeah. Um,
Does that do you, and can you think of a reason why that would happen?
I just like you saying, like your perception and the way that your mind works. My idea is that if, say, for example, in this conversation that we're having, it's not necessarily a creative process. We're having a conversation, but it is essentially, we are creating this conversation. And so it's not solely artistry. This is a conversation, but it's, Jay-Z said this. He's like, there's art in everything that you do in an interview that you conduct. And so I'm not exactly sure like what's the process across the board that that's happening, but it makes sense.
Yeah, yeah, and that's a good point that Jay Z made. Go Jay Z, okay.
Yeah.
Um, because while we're having this conversation, your brain is like, okay, do I want to go this way? Do I want to go that way? Do I want to touch on this? Do I want to expand on that? So you're basically dancing, you know. And when I think of
Mm.
taking you through a dance exercise training, so you could be a better salesman, because what is sales about? You need to read in real time the reactions of the people you're trying to sell. You need to figure out the rhythms of the workforce, the rhythms of the fields that you're going into, right?
Mhm.
And what is dance? It's rhythmic, right? You need to be emotionally aware, you know, and to be a great dancer, especially in partner work dance, you
Mhm.
have to be very in tune with your partner. So you know
Yeah,
you have to be very in tune with the person who you're trying to get on
absolutely.
board.
Yeah, understanding their needs, what are their pain points, good listening skills, all that is very important in sales and coming up with the solution in order to, fix their problem. Yeah, that's
It's all,
important.
all connected.
All connected. Perception. I want to talk a little bit about perception. Tony Robbins, I was at a seminar with Tony Robbins, and he was talking about fear and how fear kind of like drags us all over the place and kind of is in control of a lot of us. And then he brought somebody on stage. Um, and Tony Robbins is like this giant man, right? He's like 6'7". And then he brought up a person like my size, like I'm 5'9". And he's like, all right, I want you to drag me across the stage. And the person my size was dragging Tony Robbins across the stage. Very difficult, very much difficult and troublesome in order to move him. But then and Tony Robbins like, let's change the perception of that. Instead of like having fear, be this like push and pull type situation, he started like just kind of like moving with and dancing with fear. And it was amazing because for me, that changed my perception just slightly of fear. That doesn't always have to be this thing that we're avoiding, but a kind of like, okay, I see this, but let me just move with it anyway. And so is your education in psychology, or what was your education? What did you study at UCLA?
Yeah, my degree is in psychology and my master's in education. And as an educator, you're everything. You're a psychologist, you're a teacher, you're a nurse, you're a mentor, you're a coach, right?
Yeah.
You're everything. And I love that example that you bring up with Tony, because basically one of the things that I teach and I train and I coach on is naming and sometimes naming. So when you hear fear, right, you think of like fear, but when you look at the physiological response, the response of the body, your response with fear, the clamming of the hands, the quickening of the heartbeat, the dilation of the pupils, it's your same response to excitement when you think about it.
Yes.
And so, my background, I actually grew up with a stutter, seriously stutter, went through years of speech therapy. There were times when I couldn't even say my name, even as an adult. So the fact that I hit the TED stage was a journey within itself. But talk about fear when you want to walk out on that stage, you see the red dot, it's there. But what I do and what I train people to do is you switch that perception and you say, instead of I'm fearful of going out there, I hope I don't fall, I hope I don't stutter, which are real things that could happen to anyone.
Absolutely.
I say, you know what? I'm so excited to go out on that red dot and empower these people and speak into their lives and share my story and hope that someone goes home thinking that they too can live their best life with some of the skills and the stories that I share today. I just switch that perception because in the end, your life is how you perceive it to be. So once you take back that control and stop having external, because there's a whole course that I'm building now calling just really taming your inner critic. And like Tony said, you don't have to oust them because they'll never leave until the day you pass on. You'll always have some type of thing in your ear, but you got to learn how to dance with it and how to move it over there. And so you can get the work done that we need you to do.
Yeah. I'm a big fan of mixed martial arts, MMA and UFC. And a lot of the fighters talk about this, about when they're like going out to fight, how they like are very nervous. It's like a natural response. But they talk about, once the doors close and the referee says fight, it's like an automatic response that their preparation kicks in. So talking about, I'm interested in public speaking as well. When you did your talk, it was very well polished, by the way. And you can see some of like your things that you were nervous about and things like that. And it was beautiful. I was enjoying very much because I presented on a very much smaller stage. I was a president of a Toastmasters organization in Arcadia. And so was Toastmasters something that helped you to, I guess, build confidence and help you prepare for public speaking?
Well, the way the brain works, right? I'm a brain fanatic. I love brain research, and I should have got my degree in psychobiology, not just psychology, but the biology part of it, because to understand both of those is huge. But the more you practice at something, the better you become. So it's still, Toastmasters, I think I always say it was just a sign from God, because there's an email that just popped up and I'm like, Toastmasters, what is this, And it's just a safe place. It's a place where you get great feedback, if you join the right club with the right folks. And I got a mentor, I felt divine gift as well, who just really coached me well. And it's great to be around people who see the potential in you that you don't see yet in yourself. And so now that I'm on global stages, and in front of thousands, getting on that first small stage in front of 4, and there's, a wonderful saying that I love saying is, don't despise a day of small beginnings. And a lot of people want the big stages. You want the Tony Robbins events. But you got to start on. Tony Robbins started on that little stage in that little hotel room with 20 folks. I saw the videos. Yeah. And you got to do the small, detailed work to earn those big stages.
Absolutely. Cool. So I guess we'll start wrapping it up here. I'm not sure how long we went for, but I just want to say, Genein, thank you so much for your time, and thank you for the work that you're doing. I'm a big fan. And I just wish you the best of luck and the best of success, with your journey. It's amazing. It's amazing to watch. It's amazing to behold. So,
Thank you. I just want to just leave your audience with just the last thing that I do. The big part, like I said, behind me is my diamond. And so I tell people that your creative health affects your financial wealth, meaning your ability to think creatively and to really conjure up those new ideas, and then have the tools to learn how to bring them to the marketplace. That affects your financial wealth, your health wealth, your life being wealth, your purpose wealth. And so everyone, all the listeners here are carrying around like little diamonds within them. They're little ideas that you've had, but they may look like rocks because they're not polished yet, you know, and they're not buff, they're not cut yet, like a jeweler. And that's the beauty about having like a mentor or coach, is you get to have your jeweler to help you cut them just right so you can shine bright like a diamond, because we need your gifts, we need your diamonds, we need you to shine bright for the world. So thank you so much for allowing me to share.
Yeah, absolutely. That's beautiful, Genein. Thank you so much.
Hey, what's up? I'm Marty Yang, creator of the Lucky Brain podcast. Thanks so much for tuning in. If you're enjoying the content, please hit the like button and also subscribe to my channel. Thanks so much. Hope you enjoy.